Welcome to this Halloween special from Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your carved-faced host, Dom, and in this spooky season special, we're going to look at some Halloween episodes of television. We're also going to review the 2007 American anthology horror film written and directed by Michael Dougherty, Trick or Treat. Plus, we're going to listen to some scary stories. Well, I'm going to tell a scary story from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And end with a reading of a horror classic. This ghastly Halloween has been a lot of fun. I watched my Halloween favorites, gone to a haunted house, been to a pumpkin patch, and listened to some scary stories. Now I'm ready to get my bag of candy and settle in for the creepiest night of the year. So lock your doors, bolt your windows, and turn off the lights. Get ready to be scared.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock.
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV sets for the Horrorthon. And remember the big giveaway at 9. Don't miss it. And don't forget to wear your masks. The clock is ticking. It's almost time.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween.
Alright, so to start off the special, I just wanted to get into some of the spookier episodes of some of my favorite TV shows. Because every year around Halloween, as a kid and even now, I just can't wait for any of my favorite TV shows. Mostly it'll be like the ones that are episodic, not serial, to premiere their Halloween-themed episodes, and they usually will do that. I mean, even some episodic ones will do that from now and then. But I always love when they decided to go all out and give us something a little bit creepier. Most of the time they weren't too over the top and scary and all out, crazy or whatever. But here's just a few of my favorites. Starting off at the top, let's just go with Treehouse of Horror. That's from The Simpsons. I'm probably going to do an episode on that eventually in the future. So maybe we'll save that for maybe next Halloween. But I always loved waiting every year to see what they were going to, spoof or make fun of. And, some of the older ones are a little bit creepier. The first few ones, actually tried to be scary. And then you get to now where I think, or more later episodes, I think now they've kind of got back to trying to be spooky, but there was a time there where it was just let's just make fun of any old movie. I think it really kind of started when they started doing Mr. and Mrs. Smith and just throw things in there that it's okay, why are you spoofing Parasite? That has nothing to do with horror or anything like that. But, the King, they introduced Kang and Kodos in those ones, and they're, staples of the Halloween for the Treehouse of Horror and for The Simpsons as a whole. And what I love is that like I said, the older ones, they actually tried to, be a little bit spookier. There's some memorable ones, the one that I like is the Thing in High, where Bart finds out he has a twin, or Fly versus Fly, where Homer buys the transporter and then Bart goes in with the fly and they he gets the fly head and then his head's on the fly body. Or even The Shining, where they spoof The Shining and they can't say The Shining, and it's basically that, and it's just fun, over the top, and ridiculous. And there's even they did The Raven in one of them, a whole complete rereading of The Raven. But some aren't even just like spoofs of specific things. They kind of take some things like the idea of like I know what you did last summer, and then they kind of twist it around where it's like where they hit Ned with the car as he's doing like a midnight walk or whatever, or jog or something. I always remember Homer was like, you know, he's like talking about I forgot what he said, but he's like, can't get enough of that Sugar Crisp. He's eating Sugar Crisp cereal for some reason. Marge is like, Homer, did you remember to put the fog lights in? Guess if you're a guy to put the fog lights in. Just ridiculous. And then it turns out he's a werewolf, and then not Homer, but Ned. And it's pretty funny. Like he comes back to get them. And then like when they do things like with zombies all the time, like the Omega Man, where Homer thinks he's the last person on Earth, and there's people who were mutated with zombies because it was like, I guess Mayor Quimby made fun of some like French guys, and so then the French got mad and they bombed us. But then like there's some like zombies, but then it turns out like the family's okay because of the amount of lead paint on their house. It's ridiculous. And I always loved waiting to see what we get. You know, there's somewhere, you know, like where Marge is like, her and her sisters are witches, and they show like how like Halloween quote unquote started. And then there's just things like when like Lisa, you know, she does like to show like the tooth decay, but it turns out like when Bart like shocks her, like she like inadvertently creates like a miniature world out of her tooth, and it's just they shrink her down and they think Bart's the devil. It's funny. There's just so many things about like I just remember waiting every year for that, and even I mean now it's been a little like, oh, okay, I'm way older now than when I was back watching it. So I was watching like a trailer for like the new one that's gonna come out, and I was like, oh, you know what? That's pretty cool. It actually seems like they're going back to being like trying to be scary, or at least like not trying to just like, oh, what's popular right now? Oh, let's just make a spoof of Harry Potter, or let's just make a spoof of the Hunger Games, or you know what I mean? Like that's when it kind of got a little And then what I love too is that they actually did a Simpsons episode that was Halloween themed, that wasn't a Treehouse of Horror. It was just a Halloween episode that was themed Halloween. I thought that was pretty cool. I like that. I think that like idea of like doing something a little bit different and kind of, you know, going against your expectations of like, oh, it's expected that the Halloween episode would be a Treehouse of Horror, but no, like we're actually going to give you a Halloween episode. And then they, not only that, but they also did like a Thanksgiving of horror, where like they did like horror themed like Thanksgiving, which is a breath of fresh air too. So I need to go back and watch those ones too. But yeah, like that was something I always remember waiting for. One that always stands out in my mind too, and this is now moving towards like cartoons that I watched as a kid. Angry Beavers. I don't know if anybody else remembers Angry Beavers as much as I just remember the Halloween one always stood out to me because it had like this distinct art style. Like if you ever watched Angry Beavers, you know, like the art style that they had, but in their universe there was an actor that they loved, Ricardo. It wasn't Ricardo Montalban. It was something Montalvo. But whenever they watched his movies, he had like a distinct art style. And so when we get to the Halloween episode, it's like where like their universe and his universe, like his movie universe or whatever, is like merging. It's not him, the actor, it's the universe that his movies are from is merging with ours, and there's this weird like tentacle brain thing that's like merging the dimensions or something. It's so weird. It's Like, and I remember, I always remember because in like the beginning, they buy masks to go trick or treating, and they buy the monster mask from his set, and it's this little like in the cutout, it's like a little from the paper that they buy it from. It's this little picture, but it's like actual size. So, like the masks they get are these little tiny masks that they fit on their nose. It's so funny. But that one always stood out to me because it was just like such a weird like change of pace of like the art style. Like they went and they were like, hey, we're gonna be like distinct and weird. We're gonna do something a little bit different. We're gonna give you this. And I remember like I think they only played it a couple of times because I remember seeing it a few times, but then after a while, every Halloween I always waited to see it and I never did. So maybe it was just like too weird for Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon was just like, yeah, no, we're going to do something different. We're going to put something else on. And to stay on the same page with Nickelodeon, Hey Arnold, I always loved the Hey Arnold one, the Halloween special, because they basically kind of took the idea of when Orson Welles read War of the Worlds. And so they pretend like on the like channel that the people in the house they're listening to, it's like a radio, like, oh, we interrupt this message or this broadcast to there's an alien invasion, and they get like the water tower and they like light it up so it looks like a spaceship, and then they dress up in like these alien like costumes, but it turns out like the paint that they got, I think it was Harold who got it. It turns out it was like permanent or something, or like it was like more like makeup that you had to like use something to take it off. Like it didn't just come off like by wiping it or like with water, or it needed like a lot of water or something, or higher pressure or something. Like they couldn't just like wipe it off, so everyone thought they were aliens, and they're out like everyone's thinking that this is real, because it turns out like the broadcast that they do accidentally goes out further than just the house, so there are all these people like out hunting the aliens, and like they're trying to get away, and then like there are people hunting them down. It's so funny. It's pretty good. I always loved that one. I thought that one was always pretty good. And now let's move over to Cartoon Network. I remember on Cartoon Network, the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy had one where like there's two. There's one that was like Jack-o'-lantern, like the guy from the story of Jack-o'-lantern. He fooled Death or whatever, and then Death took his head, and so he had a pumpkin head, and then and it turns out because Grim is the Grim Reaper, he's Death. It was Grim the whole time that had taken his head because he fooled him. And so Billy he's so dumb. I love Billy. He dresses as Grim for Halloween, but Grim lends his scythe, his actual scythe. So then when Billy goes to Jack, like he gives him the scythe so he's able to use, and it's Wayne Knight that plays Jack. It's funny. He uses it to create like a pumpkin army, and he's like going to take over and all this stuff. It's a pretty good one. I like that one. I always remember watching that one. Or there was one where it was like all of the like B team like people like Ernie and what's the guy who's supposed to be like Snake Plissken with the hand. I forget his name. And then Fred Burger and the Spider. They all join up together. And they form a team, and they like are trying to stop. Is it like a candy bunny? I don't remember, but that one was pretty funny. I always remember that one too. I always loved when, they like any TV show that did that, any cartoon that would just be like, we're gonna do like Rocko's Modern Life. I remember that one. It's supposed to be kind of like a Headless Horseman type of story or something. Some story. I don't remember like it being played. Like, see, some of these ones I remember, but they weren't like played that often. When like some other ones were, and like getting into like some of like the like more like the live action like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I remember that one. There was a couple. There was one where like they get like hexed or something, and then they're trying to figure it out, what's like haunting them or something. Or even like Dinosaurs had one where I think I forgot the main, or not the main, the teenage brother's name in the Dinosaurs, but he like, it's like he gets bitten or something, but instead of turning into like a werewolf, he turns into like a caveman or something. But yeah, I just love when my favorite shows used to do that, and they still do that. Like Bob's Burgers does it every year. They always give us like great like Halloween episodes. Like there's the one where they go to like the island where like the rich people live, so they get like all the like really nice candies. But then they get chased by like all the teenagers, and then there's the one where Louise is. She tells them that she's never been scared before. She's never felt scared by anything. So in order to like kind of surprise her and scare her, they put on this whole elaborate like decoy haunted house that leads into like them actually spooking her, and like they actually do scare her in the end. And it's pretty funny, like like all the stuff that they go through just to get her to feel scared, because like she's like, oh, I'm not afraid of anything, so nothing's really scared me. And like just like the things that they do, like they put on like the dumbest, cheesiest fake haunted house, because that's what like Tina says, and like props to Tina, because usually she's the one who's like, oh no, we shouldn't do that. But like it's like Luis won't fall for it unless like she knows that like, oh, you tried to put on one and it just like didn't work, but so it's like it's just to pull out the rug from beneath. So she like actually thinks it's happening, because like the one guy with like the shears is following them, and then like more when he's supposed to be like banging like the stuff in the basement to make the sounds, and like he pulls his back and he's oh, and that's what the sound was. It's so funny. But I love that like Bob's Burger, like they do that every year. They give us a Halloween, and they always give us these fun like costume ideas, like Mummy Mommy, or like Queen Latifah, Queen of Latifah. That's funny. Or she's like Edward Scissorhands, Louise. It's pretty funny. Or like even like more recently, WandaVision, they did their own like Halloween special, and I love that episode. Was so good. Like the way that they did it was just like, I love that they dressed them up in like the costumes from the comics and like that throwback style, and it looks amazing. Like that episode was so good. You just get the whole feeling, and that's what I'm just gonna say about like all of them. You know, you just get that feeling of Halloween, of like it's the autumn time, it's the fall. You know, it's spooky season. You know, the seasons are changing. You know, there's a chill in the air. There's something spooky out there, and that leads to like, okay, one that's a little bit more funnier, that is a little bit more grown up. It's Always Sunny. I love the Halloween episode that they did where they're trying to figure out like who got Dee pregnant, and they go through like all these different like, oh, it was Charlie. Oh no, wait, it was Mac. Oh no, wait, it was Dennis. And then at the end you find out it was none of them. She was just like a surrogate for someone. But I just love like the costumes and like how everyone's like browning out. That's what they call it, instead of blacking out. Like they're kind of there, but they're not there. And so like they're just trying to piece everything together, and they have to get what do they call it? The McPoyles to explain everything. And it's so funny. And I just love how in their stories, more and more like Dee becomes a bird until eventually she's just an ostrich. She's literally just a bird in the end. It's so funny. but I do want to end off with two before we move on to our review of Trick or Treat. I do want to end off with two big ones. So let's just get straight into it. Goosebumps, right? Am I right? Like, that's such a great show just to watch on itself. But they had The Haunted Mask. And that's kind of what jump-started the show. Because the books had already, I think that's like the 11th book of the series. So it already had a dozen, or 10 books. It was already going to be on its dozen, like, books. But anyways, the series has already started. But the TV series started with that, The Haunted Mask, as like a special. And I think they used that as a way to jump into like the TV series. And I remember that one also has, that's one of the like two-parter ones that they did, where R.L. Stein comes out and he like introduces it and everything, and he does like the end as well. But I always remember those ones are the higher quality, like the Haunted Mask. They went all out with that one. And then the Haunted Mask 2, and that one always, I remember, because we had the Haunted Mask on VHS, like actually like the Goosebumps, the VHS of it, and that included like the coming soon or whatever, like the, for the A Night in Terror Tower, and it had like the little featurette for that. And then we had the Haunted Mask 2 recorded on a VHS. And I remember I would always love to watch that one because they had like commercials and Halloween commercials that like you could only, I mean, that were like old by then. And that was like maybe like at most 6 or 7 years old. But to me, it was always like great to like see like this kind of snippet in time of like this is what the commercials were like back then, and like it just, and like some of the Halloween commercials. And another one that I love, and so one of my favorites, is Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns. That one's great too, and it's just like it gets you in that spooky Halloween vibe because it's just like the atmosphere, the music that they play. Like it's just I can tell you now, like when I'm like thinking of a movie or like I'm trying to create like a story, like, and I'm picturing the music, it's always like it's like very synthy, and I'm like, it's got to come from a few places. That's got to come from John Carpenter, from all of his movies in the 80s are very synthy. And so there's that, and then there's, I think, Killer Clowns from Outer Space is kind of like that too, kind of synthy a little bit. But then it's like Goosebumps has like this kind of synthy too, that this kind of like ambiance that they create with the music that also plays into like it's just like this kind of percussion and like just these sounds. And that's why I think probably I love, like, there's certain music that I love that it's just like kind of these sounds that are different, that are not normal sounds you hear, and that so I always love that too. But just like the effects that they I mean, it's not great or top notch or anything, but for like a kids TV show, it's pretty good, you know. They're pretty creepy episodes, like the part in the Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns where she has like the dream about like they get ushered into somebody's house and there's just like they're being forced to like, I don't know, become prisoners in this house or something, and like the guy has like this kind of like face like deformity or something, and he's like, oh I love trick-or-treaters or something, and it's just scary. It's just like, I feel like for kids these are truly scary, and I talk about that in my horror for kids. I talked about Goosebumps before, but let's move into something for adults that seems like it's for kids. South Park. And South Park does some pretty good Halloween episodes. The ones that always stand out are like the one where everyone gets pink eye, quote unquote, and it just turns out they're all zombies. Or, and like Chef does he does like the Thriller, like he looks like he's dressed up as Michael Jackson. But then another one is when Corn comes to town and everyone hates Corn, like all the parents, you know, and it just goes to show, like, at the time, you know, like parents really did. Because I remember they're like, oh, Korn's the devil, like Marilyn Manson's the devil. There are all these bands. They're not good. They're gonna, because of Satan and this and that, blah blah blah. And in the episode, they show you like, oh no, Korn's just like they're regular old people, and they're there to solve a mystery, guys. And it's pretty funny. Like, I love when they're showing how like everything was done. It's like, yeah, it was just done with the projector and Q-tip or something, and it's like a sailboat as like the ghost pirate ship or something. It's pretty funny. I've always loved like just like I said. I know this is probably like me rambling on for a while of like just going through TV but there's just like something about like, you know, you get to see. I guess it's like seeing other people's like celebration of Halloween, right? Like, yeah, we get to see every year people celebrating Christmas or Thanksgiving or the 4th of July, but you know, it's something special seeing people's, you know, your unique costume. You know, what do you do for Halloween? Like, do you go out? Do you go party? Do you stay home? Do you watch a bunch of scary movies? Do you give out candy? Do you like shut the lights off and hope nobody comes to your door? You know, do you want to be scared? Do you not want to be scared? Do you want something more fun? Like, there's so many different things you could do for Halloween, and that's why I think it's just this mixed bag of like basically a mixed bag of candy. You know, like you can get something that's, you know, a dark chocolate, or something that's more fruity flavored, something that's gummy, something that's sour, something that's gonna make you, it's spicy, like a hot tamale, you know. But at the end of the day, most people are just gonna be there for like the Reese's and the Snickers, you know what I mean, like the classics, M&Ms, things like that, Twix. And some people want nerds, some people want this and that, and that's what TV does too. They give you these different options. They give you like, hey, you can go watch your favorite horror movies, or you can sit back and watch like a 20-minute show that's going to be just like a little bit spooky, but not too spooky. And that's what I've always loved about TV. And like when they decide like, let's do something spooky for Halloween. Let's give them a Halloween special, something that they can, you know, remember for years and years. And it just creates like this image in your head, and your picture of what Halloween is that. And I love it. And I could probably go on and on about it, but you know, we have the rest of the episode to talk about, and we got to review some stuff. We got to talk about some scary stories. So let's move on to Trick or Treat.
Trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat for Halloween. Better give a treat that's good to eat if you want to keep life serene. Trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat the whole night through. Little scalawags with fiendish gags.
So this is an introduction into the review. Back in high school, I went to this kind of like technical school you could take during your high school, so it kind of jumpstart your career. It was called EVA. It was the East Valley Institute of Technology. We would produce a TV show called ETV. And I remember one of the films because we would talk about different things. We would talk about news. We talk about things here locally, things that affected us as teenagers, right? But we also talked about film. You know, like we did film, so we wanted to talk about movies. And so one of those movies that we talked about back in like 2007 or before was a little film called Trick or Treat. Michael Dougherty made his directorial and writing debut with his animated short film Season's Greetings, which was released in 1996. The animated short film marked the debut of Sam, the pint-sized spirit of Halloween, who would later become the star of Trick or Treat. Years later, Dougherty would go on to co-write several screenplays, including X2, the sequel to X-Men, the screenplay for the horror film Urban Legends Bloody Mary, and Superman Returns. Riding high on his fruitful collaborations with X2 and Superman Returns director Bryan Singer, and he's a whole can of worms I don't even want to get into in this episode. Dougherty was given the opportunity to turn his 4-minute short film from Season's Greetings into a feature-length project in late 2006, with Singer backing him up as a producer. Dougherty had been trying to get Trick or Treat made for many years, but major studio executives were confused and kind of turned off by the script and that kind of anthology style horror film in the early 2000s was kind of considered dated and unappealing, and Trick or Treat was abandoned, and all Hollywood really cared about at that time kind of was we were still kind of feeling the effects of Scream and these films that had come out in the early 2000s, so they really didn't want to touch an anthology film. So Doherty went on to make his feature directorial debut with the cult horror film Trick or Treat, ahead of the original October 2007 release date. There was tons of merchandise available in stores, including Sandman action figures and a graphic novel. I remember seeing the graphic novel at Virgin Records. There was a Virgin Records that used to be in one of the malls around here. Doherty and the backing studio, Legendary Pictures, had big hopes for Trick or Treat. They produced what they thought was the most fun-loving Halloween movie ever, and a few small screenings nationwide kind of confirmed their accomplishment with glowing reviews from everyone in the horror community. But Warner Brothers, who was in charge of distribution, they really didn't share in that enthusiasm, and they balked and postponed the film's October 2007 release indefinitely. After sitting in Warner Brothers vaults for 2 years, Trick or Treat was eventually kind of just dumped out onto stores with a minimal advertising straight to DVD release in October of 2009. But positive buzz and the film's A-grade quality had led to Doherty's passion project to receive acclaim and went on to gain a cult following before finally being released theatrically. I didn't know this, just last year in October. The short film, Season's Greetings, was included on the DVD as an extra, but it was also aired on FearNet in October 2013 as part of a 24-hour trick-or-treat marathon on Halloween. And Doherty did make some shorts for that exclusive. I think they might be included now on the Blu-ray. But ever since 2009, when it was released, every October, the film continues to gain new fans through word of mouth, especially at specialty screenings, showings on cable channels, and through streaming. So, Trick or Treat has become the new millennium's top horror, one of the top horror movies, and certainly a top anthology film. But let's just get right into the film.
During the spookiest time of the year, there are a few guidelines all ghosts and goblins should follow. Always stay on sidewalks. Never go to a stranger's house. And never go out alone.
This is the one night that all sorts of things roam free. Sorry. All these traditions.
Wait.
What?
You're supposed to keep it lit.
Why?
Ain't you tradition?
Putting on costumes,
I look like I'm 5. You look great. What did we do now? We meet our dates.
jack-o'-lanterns.
Why are we here? To pay our respects to the dead?
The Halloween school bus massacre.
They started to protect us, but
Morning, guys. What are you doing down there? Hiding buddies?
nowadays, no one really cares.
This one's still lit.
What is that?
It's them.
Oh my God.
Look at me. It's not a trick. It's real.
Tonight is about respecting the customs, not breaking them.
The film takes place on Halloween night in the fictional town of Warren Valley, Ohio. The plot follows a non-linear narrative with characters crossing paths throughout the film. At the center of the story is Sam, a peculiar trick-or-treater in a burlap pajama costume, and he appears to enforce the rules of Halloween. And in the film, he is played by Quinn Lord. At the end of the night, Emma and her Halloween-loving husband, Henry, return home after a celebratory night. They are played by Leslie Bibb and Tomo Pennicott, respectfully. Emma, who kind of doesn't like Halloween, blows out their jack-o'-lantern before midnight against Henry's superstitious advice. As Henry relaxes and falls asleep in the house, Emma begins tearing down the decorations, but is then ambushed and murdered by an unseen assailant. Hours later, Henry discovers her mutilated corpse on display with the decorations. Earlier in the night, Charlie, played by Brett Kelly, is smashing jack-o'-lanterns and stealing candy from an unattended bowl when he's caught by his school principal, Steve Wilkins, who is played by Dylan Baker. He had left the bowl out for trick-or-treaters to come and grab one. Seemingly taking offense in stride, Wilkins offers Charlie a candy bar while lecturing Charlie on the importance of respecting Halloween rules and traditions. Charlie gradually feels more unwell until he begins to vomit chocolate and blood. As Charlie dies, Wilkins reveals that he laced the candy with cyanide, remarking, "You should always check your candy." While clumsily attempting to hide the murder, he hands out candy to trick-or-treaters, who we will see later, including Sam. Wilkins attempts to bury Charlie in his backyard along with the body of another victim, but is continually interrupted by his young son Billy, his cantankerous elderly neighbor Mr. Krieg, and Krieg's dog Spike. Krieg is played by Brian Cox. The other victim turns out to still be alive and struggles in his sack, forcing Wilkins to violently beat him to death with a shovel before anyone can discern the noise. When Wilkins returns indoors, he briefly notices Krieg screaming for help at the window. Wilkins brushes him off before something seems to attack him. Wilkins guides Billy, played by Connor Lavins, downstairs to carve a jack-o'-lantern, hiding a knife behind his back. After some hesitation, Wilkins appears to stab Billy. However, Billy is unharmed, and it is revealed that the knife was plunged into Charlie's severed head, the jack-o'-lantern they are about to carve. The group of teenage trick-or-treaters we saw at Wilkins' house, Macy, Chip, Schrader, and Sarah, are collecting jack-o'-lanterns when they meet devout Halloween traditionalist and autistic savant Rhonda. The teens are played by Brett McKillop, Alberto Gissi, Jean-Luc Bildu, Isabel Deuce, and Sam Todd, respectively. The group is led by Macy to the flooded quarry where she recounts the urban legend of the Halloween school bus massacre. In the legend, the weary and restful parents of 8 seemingly mentally handicapped children bribed their bus driver to dispose of them. Before the driver could complete his plan, one child escaped the shackles and took control of the bus, accidentally driving it off a cliff and into the quarry. The children all drowned, though the driver survived, yet was never heard from again. No one tried to find the bus, as the people didn't want it to be found. The group take an elevator down to the bottom of the quarry. Macy leaves 8 jack-o'-lanterns by the lake as tribute to the deceased. The group splits up, leaving Rhonda and Chip behind. Rhonda gets separated and is then pursued by horrifying figures. But once she is hurt, while being chased, and is reduced to tears, the other teens reveal that it was them, disguised as the dead children in an attempt to prank her, all planned by Macy. Schrader realizes that the trick has gone too far and tries to comfort the terrified Rhonda, while a bitter Macy kicks a jack-o'-lantern into the water. The actual undead children emerge from the lake and attack the teens. Rhonda makes it to the elevator first and shuts the others out. They beg her to open it and let them in, but she coldly abandons them to their deaths as revenge for their prank. taking the elevator up as they scream. As she leaves, Rhonda encounters Sam and exchanges a nod of respect towards him. Lori, a self-conscious 22-year-old from out of town, joins her older sister Danielle and friends Maria and Janet for Halloween. The four young women are played by Anna Paquin, Lauren Lee Smith, Rochelle Ates, and Monica Delane, respectively. The girls all select fairy tale princess costumes, encouraging Lori to wear a Little Red Riding Hood costume. A devout Halloween traditionalist, Lori misses trick-or-treating and is uncaring of her friends' and sisters' talks of dates. While the other girls pick up dates and head to a party in the woods, Lori chooses to stay and enjoy the town festivals instead. Later, on the way to meet up with her friends, she's attacked by a hooded man dressed as a vampire. A bundle of red cloth later falls out of a tree by the girls' bonfire, revealing the injured and frightened vampire. After arriving, Lori remarks that he bit her. Lori's friends unmask the man, revealed to be Steve Wilkins, who had been seeking out victims at the festival. Lori's sister and friends all shed their clothing and skin and transform into werewolves. With it being her first time killing someone, and having sought out someone who deserves it, Lori transforms and slaughters Wilkins before devouring him. Sam, sitting on a nearby log, watches as the werewolves feast on their deceased dates. Krieg, the curmudgeonly Halloween-hating neighbor of the Wilkinses, dresses up his dog to scare trick-or-treaters off of his doorstep. As the night proceeds, Krieg encounters escalating phenomena. The front of the house is egged, the lawn is filled with ornate jack-o'-lanterns, and the hallways and ceilings are scrawled with Halloween and Samhain greetings. Krieg is ambushed by Sam. In their struggle, Krieg eventually manages to unmask his assailant, whose head resembles a grotesque hybrid of a skull and a jack-o'-lantern. Krieg shoots Sam several times with a shotgun, apparently killing him. However, Sam begins to reanimate and incapacitates and corners Krieg. Instead of killing him, Sam impales a candy bar on Krieg's lap, completing the tradition of handing out candy on Halloween. Satisfied, Sam spares a confused Krieg and ominously departs. Meanwhile, photographs burning in the fireplace reveal that Krieg was the driver from the school bus massacre who went missing. Later in the night, we see a heavily bandaged Krieg giving out candy to trick-or-treaters. From his front porch, he witnesses other characters from the film milling about and observing and upholding Halloween traditions. Billy sits on his father's porch, handing out candy and enjoying himself. Rhonda crosses the street, casually pulling her wagon filled with jack-o'-lanterns. Lori and her friends drive by, laughing to each other. And Emma and Henry arrive home. Sam witnesses Emma prematurely extinguishing the jack-o'-lantern and moves in to kill her as punishment, leading into the beginning of the film. Krieg answers another knock at his door, only to be greeted by the undead children from the bus, who brutally tear him apart in retribution for their murder. So with that ending, let us move into the part of the podcast where we talk about the kills in the kill counter. Kill counter. Alright guys, so Trick or Treat has quite a few deaths. There's a total of 27 deaths, some on screen, some off screen. Our first death of the film is Emma. She has her throat slit with a broken lollipop and is dismembered by Sam. We move to the killings of Steve Wilkins. He poisons Charlie, causing him to vomit up his guts. Next we see Wilkins trying to bury a random kid. The kid starts to stir, so Wilkins finishes him off with a shovel smack. Later in the film, we see him dressed as a vampire and attacks a woman at the parade, and he leaves her there to bleed out. During Macy's story of the kids on the bus, we see the bus driver take the kids to the quarry. One of the kids tries to drive the bus away, but ends up taking the bus and the other kids over the edge and drowns all 8 kids. And the bus driver survives. At the quarry, after the teens have scared Rhonda, the drowned kids come out of the lake and they drag away and kill Sarah. Macy, Chip, and Schrader flee from the kids and are trapped outside of the elevator by Rhonda. They plead for her to let them in, but she takes the elevator up, and we never see them again. In the woods, we see Lori walking, and she's attacked by Wilkins. We cut to the clearing, and that's where the girls are partying at, and a red bundle lands, and Lori appears. We see the cameraman, Bud, dead, along with 8 other random guys around the campfire. The bundle is shown to be Stephen Wilkins. Lori and the girls all transform into werewolves and kill Wilkins. The last death is that of Mr. Krieg. After getting attacked by Sam, we learn that he was the bus driver that drove the bus of kids to the quarry. He starts handing out candy to trick-or-treaters, and then at the end, Mr. Krieg opens the door to find the drowned kids. They attack and kill him. All gruesome deaths, and I think the only ones that actually deserved it in the end were Stephen Wilkins, because he was killing not only kids, but he was also killing like random people, and like that one woman at the festival, he like leaves her to bleed out. And then Krieg, obviously, because he was the bus driver who killed some kids, and he was a grumpy old man, and he deserved it. But for now, let's just move on to my final thoughts about the film. After first seeing the poster and the teaser for this film, it was, back when I was in high school. I had just started going to EVIT, which is like a technical school you could take in high school here in Arizona. It stands for East Valley Institute of Technology. I might have talked about it before, I don't remember. I had always wondered after, a couple of years, like what happened to that film, and, nothing appeared, and I just thought we'd never get to see it. Maybe it was just something that kind of like a faded to obscurity, or like, did I dream that? Did I actually think about that? Then one day I was at my local record store here in Arizona called Zia Record. So if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I saw the Blu-ray and I bought it. And from then on, I've been in love with this film. I mean, the effects are great. Practical and CG, they meld together for a great experience. The werewolves tearing off their skins are standout. Doherty wanted it to look real, so he did practical effects and then mixed it with some CGI. I think that works the best when you mix the practical and the CGI, because the CGI is there to enhance, is what I think. It's there to enhance anything practical, and it stands out like as one of the best performance or werewolf transformations I've seen, like akin to like a werewolf in American Werewolf in London or something like that. And I know it's supposed to be an homage to like The Howling, the way that they do it. And then the design of Sam is awesome and creepy, and all the costumes like fit and are great, and like they fit the mood. Some of them look homemade, some of them are just that vintage creepy, like the mask that the kids wear in the bus, and then just them looking like zombies is creepy. And then the acting is just on point too. I think like Dylan Baker does a great job, Brian Cox, Anna Paquin, even just like the minor, like the kids, like the kid who plays Charlie, and then the teenagers, they're pretty good. Baker does a pretty good job, I think too. He plays like so many different like roles in the film. Like he's a sweet father, he's a maniacal murderer, and a seductive vampire. And I think even like the little kid who plays Sam, I think does a pretty good job. I mean, he doesn't do too much, but like he makes you feel like that character is so real. One part of the film that makes me feel a little sad and like actually like like want to cry sometimes is the part with the kids on the bus, the special kids on the bus. It's just kind of sad to see, like, anytime, like, when, like, kids are killed or, like, just, like, things like that. Or just, like, it just makes me sad. And, like, sometimes I kind of skip the flashback because it's, like, okay, it's a little much. That I think that's, like, true horror when, like, it's, like, oh, these kids, we don't want them because they're different. And it's, like, that's fucked up, dude, for that to be in the film. But I mean, it makes it feel like, you see, like, that's what film is supposed to do. It's supposed to get a reaction out of you, right? Like, it's supposed to make you feel some way. And the fact that it makes me feel like that, it makes me feel like more scared in a way, like sad scared. I think that works really well. And that's, like, the whole thing. Like, it makes me think of, like, something like like I've been talking about, Creep Show. It makes me think about stuff like VHS. And, I mean, VHS came after that. Creep Show became before. And this is just a long line of anthology films. And Michael Dougherty, I think, just does a great job. Like, he knows Halloween and the spirit of Halloween. And he pulled it out. Left us with no stops in this one. And he did a great job with this, you know, taking that original idea of just, like, Season's Greetings. Because if you watch it, it's just, like, a quick short of, like, the Sam character, you know, going around trick-or-treating, but, like, no one's giving him anything. And then someone tries to get him, but then he captures them, and that's kind of, like, it. And in order, like, just to take this kind of short, little animated short and to build this world out of it is just amazing. And honestly has become a staple for Halloween. I gotta watch it every year because this is Halloween. Dougherty knows how to make a good, like, holiday horror movie. He did it with Krampus, but, you know, he's also been planning on making a sequel to this ever since then. And just recently we got some news that he's actually, like, moving forward. He's got an idea of, like, what the script is going to be. But unfortunately, the writer's strike is still going on. I mean, the writers deserve what they're asking for and more. And once they get all of this worked out, hopefully we do get a move on with this this project, the Trick or Treat 2, or whatever he calls it, and we get to see more of this world. He says he has a bigger plan for Sam and who Sam is going to rival, so I can't wait for that. But even if we don't see that same setting, like, maybe it might be a different place in the world or a different, like, city in America, right? Because it's probably going to be set in America. I would love it even more. I like when they move things around. Like, Sam doesn't have to just exist in one place, right? He can exist in multiple places across the country because he's the spirit of Halloween, right? And I just would love to see more of this world, more of Sam, more of just, like, what are the other traditions that people are forgetting about? And like with the jack-o'-lantern, putting out the jack-o'-lantern before midnight, or not handing out candy for kids, things like that. That Sam has to go after them and, like, prove, like, hey, you got to do this on Halloween, or you're gonna be killed. Ever since I got this film and got to see it, and it's filled my life with more joy, and I love to. This is what I love about film and cinema and horror films. It's just sometimes you get a film like this where, hey, you know what? Didn't have a full release, but I got to see it, and now look at it. It's become a cult classic, and everybody loves it. It's become, like I said, Halloween time. It gets played all the time. Trick or Treat, like, is synonymous with Halloween now. And I give this movie, like, 10 thumbs up. This movie is so good. It's shot really well, acted really well. The cinematography is good. I love the idea of, like, it's also kind of like a graphic novel-ish, like, callback to, like, Creepshow. See, there's just so much to it that I love, that I can enjoy, that I can gush about it. It's just so good. It's such a great film. Everyone needs to watch it for Halloween or even if you're just feeling in that spooky spirit sometime outside of the year, watch it. You'll love it. I showed it to my mom, and she finally watched it, and she loves it now. And she loves, like, Sam, that little character. And I think, it's something, too, like, I think, like, my nephews would like, too. It's not, like, there is some, like, gory parts, but they do cut away a lot when it comes to the death, so I think it's not too bad for them, and they're getting a little bit older. I feel like this is one film that they could also watch to get them into, like, that Halloween and, like, more advanced horror films. But yeah, guys, like, this movie is so good. It's just what you need on Halloween. So just to add to the already spooky episode that we're celebrating Halloween for, I want to read a couple of scary stories I found on the internet. Our first tale is called The Elderly Woman's Flat. I'm a police officer working on an emergency response team on a busy London borough. We took a call to a suspected domestic incident in a block of flats. The informant said that she could hear screaming and sounds of disturbance coming from the flat above her. Once we arrived, my colleague and I knocked on the door of the flat the informant said the noise was coming from. I had heard nothing on my way up and certainly couldn't hear any disturbance coming from the address. To be honest, I heard nothing at all. After knocking twice, we had no response. My colleague left me to go downstairs and speak directly to the informant. I stayed by the door. I knocked again, and after some time I was answered by an elderly woman. She had clearly been asleep and was alarmed to see me standing outside. I told her that someone had called saying that they could hear a disturbance coming from within her address. I asked her if there was anyone else inside with her. She looked bemused and told me that she lived alone and had been sleeping. I asked her if I could come in to satisfy myself that no one else was there. She invited me in, and I walked into what was a small 2-bedroom flat. The flat was in darkness, apart from her hall light and her bedside lamp. I began searching the flat, and as I approached the final door, the living room, my colleague called me up on the radio. He told me that he was on his way and asked if I was okay. I told him everything was fine, wondering why he sounded so flustered. He told me that he was with the informant and could also hear screaming and loud thuds coming from the flat I was in. I told him that he must be mistaken, as I was almost done searching the flat and that I had heard nothing whatsoever. I have to admit a feeling of unease as I opened the final door. Like all other rooms, it was in darkness but was freezing cold. My breath misted immediately. There was no one in the room and no signs of disturbance. No window was open. I called my colleague and asked him to listen out for my footfall. He said he could hear my feet as I stamped them, but said that the screaming had stopped. This coincided with me opening the door. I left shortly after apologizing to the elderly woman for waking her. I have no rational explanation for this at all. My colleague and I left feeling very creeped out. Yeah, that's kind of creepy. You just go to someone's apartment, and like, cause you get a call that like you hear like these like loud screaming and like this whole like mess of like some kind of domestic disturbance, right? And you get there and like this, it's just some person who's like asleep, and they're like, "What are you talking about? There's no one else but me here." And then like you can still like, it's creepier that it's like that they could still hear the sounds while he was like looking, and he can't hear anything, but they can keep hearing these sounds and noises. And then once you open like that one door into that one room, like it just stops. That's when it gets like even creepier. And I was reading some comments on this one, and people were saying like, oh, it could be like if there was another apartment above them, like on the third floor, or even above that, like the sound can travel down. Like maybe it was on another apartment, but even so, like why did it stop when he opened the door? Like why did it just go quiet when he started investigating that one room? I don't know. It's just very, very creepy. Our next story is called Blood-Curdling Screams. Had a couple of weird things occur one night. I was working a night shift in a small town and received a call to the hospital. The call was from the lone security guard on site, who didn't feel comfortable dealing with this on his own. The call was dispatched as urgent assistance. On arrival to the hospital, the guard stated to me that the nursing staff had heard what they referred to as blood-curdling screams coming out of the then closed psychiatric unit. There were no patients or staff in the unit at the time. The door to the unit was clear glass door, and there was nothing visible on the other side. I requested the keys to unlock the door. After turning the key in the door and unlocking the deadbolt, before I was able to remove the keys from the door, something had forced the lock and relocked the door, resulting in my hand, still holding the key, to be physically moved as well. I was pretty creeped out myself, but based on the severity of the call, I still entered the room and conducted a search of the entire unit with no result. Immediately after clearing the unit, another call came in, but this time it was from a nurse walking to her car on the street. She also heard loud screams. I ran down to the hospital parking lot where another unit met me, and we searched the area. I then came across a small park, and we could hear a very faint squeaking sound. I followed the sound only to come across a swing set of 4 swings. 3 swings were absolutely still, as there was no wind, and the other was moving almost as if there was someone still sitting on it, and pumping to gain momentum. I stood there in awe for a good 30 seconds, and the swing did not lose any momentum. What a weird night. I mean, it's kind of just like that first one, right? Where, like, you hear these screams and, like, you go to investigate, but then there's nothing there. And, like, he unlocked it. I mean, you could say maybe he didn't really, like, fully unlock it, and maybe that's what caused his hand to, like, push out or something. Or maybe, like, he relocked, like, I don't know. It could have been something like that. But, like, I've never had a door, like, relock on me like that. Unless I'm intentionally like locking it instead of unlocking it. Maybe he did that and he thought he unlocked it, but still it's weird when like your hand gets pushed out and then it relocks. That's very creepy. And then for it to be in like a psychiatric hospital or the psychiatric unit of the hospital, still pretty creepy. That's fucking creepy. This one's called The Bunk Bed. When I was 6, I slept on a bunk bed in a room alone. The bottom bunk was empty. It was meant for my younger brother, but he was too scared of sleeping in a bed alone. So I was alone in that room that night. I remember a chilling feeling that night when it suddenly got really warm. Probably because I was undergoing a night terror of some sort. Then I start breathing heavily and open my eyes and see the room is empty. My little nightlight in the corner of the room comforts me back to sleep. Except as I closed my eyes, I felt a heavy hand petting my shoulder. My eyes rip open, and there's no one in the room. As soon as I lay back down, the petting continued, and I covered my head, just pretending to myself that was my mom, and it took me 12 years to stop sleeping with my head under the covers because of that memory. My mom, of course, knew a woman passed away in that apartment before we moved in, so she always believed it was the woman trying to comfort me. And to that, I would say, please don't comfort me in the middle of the night like that. Like, even if you're going through a night terror, and maybe that's would it have been, like, because you never know, right? It could have been like he just kept waking up and that he thought he was feeling that, but at the same time, some old lady dies in that room and tries to comfort you in the middle of the night, and like you hear that story, like that's creepy. Like, lady, you don't need to wake your spirit up for that. Like, you can leave me alone. You can let me sleep. Our next tale is called The Old Apartment. At my mom's old apartment, I used to have this feeling I was being watched. Then I was starting to wake up at 3 a.m. consistently. On one of the nights, I had woken up and I heard someone call out my name. It was a woman's voice, but I didn't recognize it. She had kept calling out my name and walking towards my bed, getting closer, but I didn't see anything. I freaked out, jumped off my bed, and ran into my brother's room. I hopped into bed with him and tried waking him up. The punk sleeps like the dead, and he still sleeps like that. I heard her footsteps follow me until his doorway. After that, every time I woke up in the middle of the night, I just ran into his room and slept on the top bunk. We had bunk beds. My mother still doesn't believe that happened. Thankfully, we only lived there for a couple of months, then moved out. And that would creep me out every night if I woke up and I just kept hearing someone or calling my name, like not even yelling, just calling my name and getting closer to my room and closer, just saying your name closer and closer. Like, what would happen if she had stayed in her room and it got close enough to open the door, right? And then what would happen? Ugh. See, creepy things happen. Our next story is called The Little Boy. In high school, I was babysitting for a single mom and her 2 kids. It was the middle of winter, and when I arrived, it was already pitch black out, around like 6 p.m. She lived in a duplex. While I was standing in the living room with her and her girls, talking about how the rest of the night would go, a little boy in full snow gear came in through her front door, stomped through the living room, past us, and headed down the stairs to the basement. The mom never even looked at him or stopped talking. The girls didn't make any acknowledgement that they saw him. I was super weirded out, but I was also an extremely introverted teenager, so I didn't ask the mom what was up. Once the boy left, I asked the girls who the little boy was that came in, and they both had no idea what I was talking about. So I got brave and grabbed a broom and headed downstairs. It was a small unfinished basement, one single room with no closets or anything. No one was down there, and the little boy definitely had not come back upstairs at that time. So weird. And the only thing I have truly believed I experienced something paranormal. I normally scoff at ghost stories and stuff, but that's kind of weird. Like this, let's just say for sure this happened, right? And an apparition just comes through, like, because she says it comes through the door. So he opened the door, they closed the door, walked past them. They couldn't see it. Walks downstairs to some room that just doesn't lead anywhere. And then now you're left with, like, well, what the hell did I see? Like, what was that? Like, are they playing a prank on me? Right? Like, I would be like, well, you guys pulling my leg? Like, you didn't see that kid that walked in here in full snow gear and, like, went downstairs? That would just freak me out. That would scare the hell out of me, because I'd be like, you guys didn't see that? He literally just walked in. I would be like, what is that? Like, what is it? Like, what was it? Who was it? Right? Like, was it somebody who used to live there? God, it's just like, that would be creepy to me. I feel like creepier than some other things. And our last tale is called The Doppelganger. When my daughter was about 9 or so, we just moved into a new house in a new town. It wasn't a creepy house or an old house, just a new house. One Saturday morning, she was invited to go to a friend's house to build a snowman and sled. Her friend's mom was going to pick her up, and so all was good. I made sure she ate and had warm clothes on and whatnot, and saw her off and locked the door behind her. After she left, I got back into my bed to sleep more, since it was 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. Around 11 a.m. I woke up. I clean on Saturdays, so I turned on my music and started cleaning the bathroom like always. I bent over the bathtub cleaning it, and I hear the front door open and close. I see and hear my daughter's hot pink winter coat swish by as she walks past the bathroom to her room. I say, "Hey, did you have fun?" She didn't answer, but the music was loud and I didn't think much of it. She probably didn't hear me. I switched from the bathtub over to the toilet and I started cleaning it. Out of the corner of my eye, I see and hear her pink coat walk back by. I say, "Are you leaving again?" She answered, Yeah, Mom, love you. I said I loved her too, and then the front door opened and closed. Seconds after she leaves, I realize I should have her take the trash out since she was in boots and a coat. I run to the front door to catch her, unlock and open the door, and look for her. She's not there. I close the door and kind of wonder where she went so fast. I then see on the bookshelf by the door that her lanyard with her house key is on it, just sitting there. My blood went cold and my stomach dropped out of my ass. You couldn't lock or unlock the door without a house key from the outside. It was a door with the knob and then locked only with the deadbolt. I knew that I had locked it behind her that morning when she initially left, and I knew I just unlocked it to go call her. We had 2 house keys, and her lanyard and my car key ring were right there on the bookshelf. At this point, I'm freaking out. She had a little tiny red flip phone I'd make her carry, so I called her. In order to not freak her out, I asked if she had come back by the house or something. She tells me no, and that they've been inside with the movie and hot chocolate for a while. She asked me why, and I said, oh, never mind. Have fun, okay? Before I hang up, she says, can you leave the door unlocked because I left my house key inside? Who was that? What the fuck? It's fucked that with me ever since. I don't ever want to see a doppelganger again. Ever. I mean, and I wouldn't either. That's fucking creepy. Like, see, it's things like that where, you know, like the thing with like the little boy coming in and like opening and closing the door. Like, sometimes these things do that. Whatever they are, like a doppelganger or an entity or a ghost or whatever you want to call it, right? Why? Like, why does it need to freak us out? Why does it need to scare us? It's just so creepy, and like things like that where, because I've had things like that happen too with my family where this was a while ago when my brother was a little, and my older brother, he was home with him, and he went to take a shower, and the way when you come in and then you go to your left, to your left, and that leads to my mom and dad's room, and then they have a bathroom, and that was the only bathroom that was working, so he went in there. He left my little brother in the living room, but when he was in the bathroom, and getting ready to take a shower, or maybe it was after, I'm not sure. I think it might have been after, when he had just got done. He could hear the front door open and close. And then he heard my mom and dad's room open and close. And so he was like, oh, okay, maybe somebody came home, right? Maybe it was my mom. My dad is his stepdad. So, you know, maybe their dad got home. So he gets done, comes out, and my little brother's in my mom and dad's room watching TV instead of in the living room. And my brother is kind of like, hey, who came home? And, you know, he looks at my brother, and he just like shrugs. He's like, hey, did mom come home? And he just like shrugs. He's like, did your dad come home? Did like any of our other brothers and sisters come home? And he just kept shrugging. And he's like, well, he clearly heard the door open and close. So maybe whatever it was, maybe he opened and closed the door. I don't know, right? But like, why then go into the room? Like, and he said he wasn't like fully scared or anything. So I don't think it was like something malicious, but something happened, right? Something happened that caused him to at least freak out enough to like go to a different room and sit there and wait for like my brother to get out of the bathroom. And that's just kind of weird. Like, these weird things happen where, like, what do they want? Why are they just like opening the door? Are they like, is it like, well, that one in this case was a new house. Like, why would it like an entity or a ghost or anything like that like haunt a new place? Maybe it's the place it's built on. Maybe has some kind of like echo. I don't know. Like even like doppelgangers themselves, like why does it need to open the door, come in, and then like, you know, even talk and say like, and like speak like us or like her, And it's like, yeah, I love you, Mom, and stuff, and then leave. And then the fact that the door was like locked from the inside, there's just so many layers of creepy. Just creepy, creepy, creepy. And that's what I love about like scary stories and telling these scary stories during Halloween, because you just get that, ooh, so spooky feeling. On TikTok this Halloween season, I've been reading some stories from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So for this special, I want to read one story that is based on true events. Well, true in the sense that the book says is based on true events. This story is called The Trouble. The events of the story took place in 1958 in a small white house in the suburb of New York City. The names of the people involved had been changed. Monday, February 3rd. Tom Lombardo and his sister Nancy had just come home from school. Tom was going on 13, Nancy was 14. They were talking to their mother in the living room when they heard a loud pop in the kitchen. It sounded like the cork had been pulled off from a bottle of champagne, but it was nothing like that. The cap of the bottle of starch had somehow unscrewed, and the bottle had tipped over and spilled. Then bottles all over the house began popping. Bottles of nail polish remover, shampoo, bleach, rubbing alcohol, even a bottle of holy water. Each had a screw cap that took 2 or 3 full turns to open, but each has opened by itself, without human help. Then had fallen over and spilled. "What is going on here?" Mrs. Lombardo asked. Nobody knew, but the popping soon stopped, and everything went back to normal. It was just one of those crazy things they decided to put it off in their minds. Thursday, February 6th. Just after Tom and Nancy got home from school, 6 more bottles popped their caps. The next day, at about the same time, another 6 did. Sunday, February 9th. At 11 that morning, Tom was in the bathroom, brushing his teeth. His father was standing in the doorway, talking to him. All of a sudden, a bottle of medicine began moving across the vanity by itself and fell into the sink. At the same time, a bottle of shampoo moved over the edge of the vanity and crashed onto the floor. They watched, spellbound. "I better call the police," Mr. Lombardo said. That afternoon, a patrolman interviewed the family as bottles popped into the bathroom. The police assigned a detective named Joseph Briggs to the case. Detective Briggs was a practical man. When something moved, he believed that a human or an animal had moved it, or had moved because of a vibration or the wind or some other natural cause. He did not believe in ghosts. When the Lombardos said that they had nothing to do with what was going on, he thought that at least one of them was lying. He wanted to examine the house. Then he wanted to talk to some experts and find out what they thought. Tuesday, February 11th. The bottle of holy water that had opened the week before opened a second time and spilled. 2 days later, it spilled again. Saturday, February 15th. Tom, Nancy, and a relative were watching TV in the living room when a small porcelain statue rose up from a table. It flew 3 feet through the air, then fell on the rug. Monday, February 17th. A priest blessed the Lombardo's house to protect it against whatever was causing the trouble. Thursday, February 20th. When Tom was doing his homework at one end of the dining room table, a sugar bowl at the under end flew into the hall and crashed. Detective Briggs saw it happen. Later, a bottle of ink on the table flew into a wall and broke, spattering in all directions. Then another porcelain statue took off. It traveled 12 feet and smashed into a desk. Friday, February 21st. To get some peace, the Lombardos went to a relative's house for the weekend. While they were gone, everything at home was normal. Sunday, February 23rd. When the Lombardos returned, another sugar bowl took off. It flew into a wall and smashed to smithereens. Later, a heavy bureau in Tom's room toppled over, but nobody was in the room when it happened. Monday, February 24th. By now, Detective Briggs had talked to an engineer, a chemist, a physicist, and others. Some thought the vibrations in the house were causing the trouble. These could come from underground water, they said, or from high-frequency radio waves, or from sonic booms caused by airplanes. Others said that the electrical system was the cause, or downdrafts coming from the chimney. The popping of bottles was blamed on chemicals in the bottles contained. Tests showed that there were no vibrations in the house, there was nothing wrong with the electrical system, and there were no chemicals in the bottles that would make them pop. Then, what was causing the trouble? None of the experts knew. But every day, the Lombardos received dozens of letters and telephone calls from people who thought they did know. Many believed that the house was haunted. They thought that a poltergeist was on the loose. This is a noisy ghost that is blamed when things move around on their own. No one has proved that poltergeists exist, but people everywhere told stories about them for hundreds of years, and what they have told was not too different from what was happening to the Lombardos. Detective Briggs did not, of course, believe in poltergeists. He had begun to believe that Tom Lombardo might be to blame. Whenever something happened, Tom was usually in the room or nearby. When he accused Tom of causing the trouble, the boy denied it. "I don't know what is going on," he said. "All I know is that it scares me." People said that Detective Briggs was a tough cop who would turn in his mother if she did something wrong. But he believed Tom. Only now he didn't know what to think. Tuesday, February 25th. A newspaper reporter came to the house to interview the family. Afterwards, he sat in the living room by himself, hoping that something would happen so that he could describe it in his story. Tom's room was just across the hall from where the reporter sat. The boy had gone to bed, but he left his door open. Suddenly, a globe of the world flew out of the darkened room and smashed into a wall. The reporter dashed to the bedroom and turned on the light. Tom was sitting in bed, blinking as if he had just been awakened from a sound sleep. "What was that?" he asked. Wednesday, February 26th. In the morning, a small plastic statue of the Virgin Mary rose up from a dresser in Mr. and Mrs. Lombardo's bedroom and flew into the mirror. That night, while Tom was doing his homework, a 10-pound record player took off from the table, flew 15 feet, then crashed to the floor. Friday, February 28th. Two scientists arrived from Duke University in North Carolina. They were parapsychologists who studied experiences like those the Lombardos were having. They spent several days talking to the family and examining the house, trying to understand what was going on and what was causing it. One night, a bottle of bleach popped its top, but that was all that happened during their visit. They did not tell the Lombardos about a theory they had that a poltergeist actually might be involved in such cases. According to this idea, poltergeists were not ghosts. They were normal teenagers. They had become so troubled by a problem that their emotions built up into a kind of vibration. Since it was taking place in their unconscious minds, they didn't even know it was happening. But the vibrations somehow left their bodies and moved whatever it struck. It happened again and again until the problem had been solved. Scientists have given the strange power a name. They called it psychokinesis, the ability to move objects with mental power or mind over matter. No one knew if this really could happen or how to prove it. Yet reports of poltergeists did involve families with teenage children, and there were 2 teenagers in the Lombardo family. Monday, March 3rd. The parapsychologist said that they would prepare a report on what they had learned. The day after they left, the trouble returned with a vengeance. Tuesday, March 4th. In the afternoon, a bowl of flowers flew off the dining room table and smashed into a cupboard, when a bottle of bleach jumped out of its cupboard box and popped its top. Then a bookcase filled with encyclopedias fell over and wedged itself between a radiator and a wall. Then a flashlight bulb on the table rose up and hit a wall 12 feet away. Finally, 4 knocks were heard coming from the kitchen when nobody was in the room. Wednesday, March 5th. When Mrs. Lombardo was making breakfast, she heard a loud crash in the living room. The coffee table had turned over by itself, but that was the end of it. After a month of chaos, everything returned to normal. In August, the 2 parapsychologists gave their report. They decided the Lombardos had not made up the story, nor had they imagined it. Their trouble had been real, but what had caused it? They said that no pranks or tricks were involved, nor was any magic. As the police have done, they also ruled out vibrations from underground water and other physical causes. The other explanation they could not rule out was the possibility that a teenage poltergeist had been at work, moving objects with mental power. They didn't have enough evidence to prove it, but it was the only answer they had. If it was a poltergeist, they thought it was Tom. If they were right, if a normal boy like Tom had become a poltergeist, this also might happen to other teenagers. It might even happen to you. Strange things like this always happen, and I always like to think what causes these things? Is it really like pent up rage or energy or emotion or hormones or whatever in like teenagers? Or is it something else, right? Could we say it's ghosts? Maybe. Could we say it's just some kind of like freak incident that we have no explanation for? Obviously, right? But it's just weird that these things happen. And there's some things like my mom always asks, like, if they're moving, let's just say it is like a spirit or a ghost or whatever, something like that. If they're moving these things around, like they saw, like if we're gonna believe that the story is true, like a true event that happened, they saw these things move around. But sometimes there's things where like, how does one thing get from one spot to another? Like you know, like you placed your keys one place, then they're missing, and then they're in another spot. Like, when you're not seeing that, like, is it just like floating in the air by itself, being moved? Does it just dissipate and then reappear? I don't know. There's weird things out there, guys. Strange things, and these things happen all the time. Sometimes they're like they said, there's causes for everything. It could have been this, it could have been that. Sometimes there's no explanation at all. And now, to end off this Halloween special, we're going to hear the classic tale of The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was the bleak December, and in each desperate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my bookcase of sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more. Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. Sir, I said, or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming, dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, I said, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more. Open, here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least of since made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched upon a chamber door, perched upon a bust of palace just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, but the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird upon his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, Doubtless, I said, what it utters is only a stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and follows faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy until fancy, thinking that the ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, Nevermore. Then I sat, engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining, that the lamplight gloated o'er, and whose violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall press, nevermore. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, sung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, that God hath lent thee, by the angels he hath sent thee, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, I said, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, whether tempest sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, I said, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell thy soul with sorrow laden, if within distant Aden it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plumes as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take the beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul, from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. So did you get enough scares this year? Did you trick or get a treat? Are you sad that the season is ending? Remember, Halloween is a mindset, not just a time of year. Thank you all for listening, and if you like what you hear, please subscribe to get every new episode downloaded. Do you have any strange or mysterious or unexplained stories? Are they fact? Did you craft a story yourself? If you'd like us to read your stories, you can email them to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to read them on the podcast. We'd also like to post those stories on our socials, on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, at Horrorbox Podcast. That's where we have news, updates, everything. One last thing, if you like the podcast and would like to support the podcast, you can buy me a coffee. You can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast. It would really help out. We'll see you next time and hear what comes out from the horror box. And have a happy Halloween.